Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for VideoCopilot.net, and welcome to another very exciting After Effects tutorial. So today we're going to take a look at some cool expressions that are going to help us out with this animation, and here's what we're creating. Alright, so it's the Awesome 6000, not to be confused with the Awesome 5000, which was linked to some serious head injuries, not confirmed by the way. But yeah, this is the new phone. It just came out in Australia, and that's why it's spelled awesome and, you know, AUS, sort of kind of a play on words. But anyway, so what you can see here is that the phones spin around in 3D and they all come to a stop. Actually, what I did was bought a phone model, brought it into 3D Max, animated 360 degrees, and then exported that, and then we import it into After Effects. So now I have a cell phone animation that has transparency in the background, and we can use it to animate. Okay, let's go and get started. I'm going to create a new composition, and we'll do DV square pixels. We'll do 30 frames per second and choose OK. Right now we're showing frames. You can also control click to show time, but frames is good for now. And I'll take our cell phone animation, bring it out. The resolution is 720p 1280 by 720, and I'll scale it down here. Okay, the basic idea here is to automate our animation. So if I hit F4, I'm going to make it a 3D layer, and I'm going to duplicate it 4 times. Control D, Control D, Control D, edit, duplicate. And then I'll make a 3D camera, new camera, and we'll just do 28 millimeter, okay. And then I'll take the orbit camera tool and just rotate slightly, and then we'll just move these back. So just push it back on the Z, push this back, and push this back. And then I can offset the time by moving the layers. And so now we have an animation that offsets in 3D space. Now the problem here is that I have to do this all by hand. And if I want to make a change, or I want to change the timing, it's going to be a lot of work to have to go in here and play with all the layers and offset them in 3D space. And what if I'm working with more than just 4 layers? What if I'm working with 20 or 30 layers? That's going to be a lot of work. So instead, we're going to use some simple expressions. And we'll reset our camera, I'll delete it and create a new camera. And so now we have our comp. We'll go ahead, shut off the 3D layer switch for now. What I'm going to do is create a new adjustment layer. And we'll call it controller. And then we're going to add an expression slider. So we'll choose expression control, slider control. And we'll call this multiplier. And what this is going to do is offset each layer in seconds based on what this is set. So if it's set to 1, it's going to offset the layers 1 second in time. It will, not yet. But first, right click, choose time, enable time remapping. And then we're going to alt click on the stopwatch. So alt click, and that brings up our expressions. And let's go ahead, hit E, bring up that slider so we can see it. And so here's our time remap. And what I'm going to type in here is time. And what that says is to play back in real time. So nothing's changed. Well, what if I do time minus 1? Time minus 1. Well, now I have to wait a second, and then it plays. So I've offset it by 1 second. And if I do 1.5, now it's offset 1.5 seconds. Now, likewise, if I delete that, say minus, and I link to this, well, now it's going to offset based on the slider control. And I'm going to right click, choose edit value, and we'll set it from 0 to 3, and bring this down. Now watch, if I change this, I'm changing the offset of the time for this layer. Now, to make it easy and repeatable, go ahead and move the phone layer to the top position, number 1 position, because we're going to use that number to drive this animation. So right now it's saying time minus this multiplier, so time minus 1.01. Well, let's delete that. Let's write something a little more crafty. So I'm going to choose time minus, and we're going to do parentheses, and we're going to do index. Index is the reference for the layer number. So index meaning layer number 1. And it can also be used as a number. So index equals 1. Index times star controller another parentheses. So just close it out. So this all gets calculated and then is taken time minus that value. So now if I change it, it works just the same. The only difference is the multiplier now affects based on the layer number. So if I duplicate this, now what we have, if I move these over, is you have 2 layers that are now offset by 1.17 seconds. So let's set that to 0.2. So now the layers are 0.2 seconds off. If I duplicate another one, Control D, say move that one over, move that one over. I've created a pretty cool animation that is very easy to control. I can change this. I mean, there's so many possibilities. We're using a 3D render, but you could say have a green screen of an actor doing one of those cheers that you see at the baseball games, and then duplicate that person and see this big wave of people cheering, you know, like if you were at a baseball game and somebody hit a home run and it hit somebody and then they fell onto the field, everybody would cheer and there would be this huge roar, and you know, it'd be really sad for that kid because then that's going to be on the news later on all the sports channels, and you know, just it's the way it works. So anyway, that's the basic idea. Now let's take it a step further. So let me delete these 2 layers. What we're going to do is add another slider control. I'm going to hit Edit, Duplicate, and we're going to call this Offset. Now the offset is going to be the position offset. So we're going to turn on the 3D layer switch, and that way our layer is 3D. Go ahead and hit P, reset the position back to the center, and I'll hit U to bring up our expression again, and I'll hit Shift P. So what I want to do now is add an offset in Z space. So I want there to be a layer here, and I want to duplicate that and that layer to be behind it in Z space. So what we'll do is Alt-click on the position, and we're going to type value. Now this operator basically says use the current value. So whatever it is what it does. So we're going to do value plus, and we have to do an array. And what this is if I do a bracket, 0, 0, 0, close the bracket, all that says is value plus 0 for this, 0 for that, and 0 for that. So X, Y, Z gets 0. So I could add, I could add 100 here, and it would see, it changes 100. I could do, anything I want. I can do anything I want. It's simply a way to add a value to a specific parameter, X, Y, or Z. In this case, we want to add it to the Z parameter. So we'll delete the 0, and we're going to add in a little expression. We're going to type index times offset. And so we can put it in parentheses even though we don't have to, because it comes after that comma, and everything between that comma and the end bracket is going to be calculated as one item. But just for the sake of clean code, we'll do it that way. Now the offset, this is pixels. So let's do, say, 250 pixels. So it doesn't make much of a change because we only have one layer, but duplicate it, duplicate it, duplicate it. Now we have 5 copies. Well, watch this. Uh-oh. Now we're talking. So I can go into the controller, change the offset, make it less. Edit value. Let's set it from 0 to 1,000. And that way it just slides around from 0 to 1,000, just like that. And remember, this is animatable too. I mean, I don't know if you'd want to, but you can animate these properties as well. So for the time, 0.1, let's set it to 0.2, and we'll set this to say 300, and we'll check our animation out. Now, what if we want these to be reversed, where the back one starts turning first, and then the front one starts turning? Well, what we can do is set the offset to -300. And just back the camera up. And now we have that perfectly aligned. So it's all about how you play with the expression, and I could have typed minus the offset or anything like that. So in any case, here is how that works. Now what I want to do is just create a quick simple animation for our end sequence. So I'll create a new null object. We'll make it 3D. We'll parent the camera to the null object. And by the way, this is all covered in the advanced camera tips tutorial. So we're just going to go through it quick, and that way I can animate this null object, and should be a lot easier. So I'll hit P, go to the beginning right before they start turning around, set a keyframe, and let's go forward closer to our phone. And we can also offset this. And we'll go just past it so that it comes into view. And we'll go forward, and we'll go and animate back until it's right there in the middle. And the animation finishes just about here. So we'll move that forward. Hit F9 or right click and choose Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease, and then we'll smooth out that. And so now the animation comes to a stop right here at the end. And let's go and take a quick preview. All right, so that's pretty cool, and obviously it is very easy to adjust. So if I want this to be faster, I can go into the controller, say do 0.1, and that way it all comes together rather quickly. Find that position, move this keyframe over. So now they come together a lot quicker. I mean, this is the awesome 6000. I mean, it should be, fast, in-your-face, action-packed. So now that we have this done, we can go ahead and make a few adjustments. I can move the camera down to sort of reposition this shot. Make sure it still looks good here. So what I've done is I've animated the null object, and now I'm just repositioning the camera after the fact. Now, all the layers are sort of oriented slightly away from the camera. So they're at sort of an angle. If we go to the top view, we can see the layers here, and our camera is right here. So they're not quite looking at the camera. So we can take all the layers, hold down Shift, choose Transform Auto Orient, and set it to orient towards camera. And that way, they'll always be looking right at the camera, and should look a lot better. However, that sometimes causes some weird things. So what I'm just going to do for this shot, shut it to off, go to the top view, hit R, and we're going to just rotate it until it's looking just about at the camera. We can go to the active camera to just make sure we're looking, and we can get these lines to be parallel, and we should be pretty close. So see, those are parallel with the box. That kind of means that they're facing the camera. So that'll just make this look a lot cleaner and a lot neater when we do the final composite. So speaking of which, this is our phone composition. So we'll call this phone, and let's go and create the world in which it's going to exist. Okay, so we have the awesome 6000. Now we need to create an awesome world. So let's create a new comp. We'll do the same settings. I'll choose OK. All right, let's just get going. I'm going to create a new solid. Make it black. Call this grad background. We'll choose effect generate ramp, and we'll do red and black. We'll do radial and just space this out a little bit. And let's go and create a new solid. We're making lots of these. Effect, noise and grain, fractal noise. And for this, we're going to go into the transform settings, uncheck uniform, and we're going to scale up the height a lot. And then we'll choose F4 and change it to add or multiply. That's better. And then we'll go to the grad background and bring this down a little bit more so it's a little bit redder. Okay, then we'll create another new red solid. So this one is our fractal noise background. Now this is going to be our floor, sort of. So we'll go ahead and just take a mask, draw it through the middle, hit F, and feather it out. And we can also bring this mask down about halfway. And we'll change the transfer mode to maybe add. And we'll do a little less on the feathering. So that looks good. Now we want to create this sort of circular element. So I'm going to create a new composition for it. So new comp, and we'll call this circle, and we'll choose OK. And we'll create a new solid, OK. And we'll choose effect, noise and grain, fractal noise. Man, this is kind of boring. I mean, being a motion graphic designer is not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, sure, the money's great. You know, plenty of beautiful women always around you. People respect you, you know. But aside from all that, it's just constant hard work. Well, Olive, let's go transform. We'll turn uniform scaling off. And we're going to bring the height down and the width up. So I want to stretch it out. And we'll bring the height down to 4, real thin. And we'll bring the contrast up and the brightness down. So real thin, just like that. And then we'll take the mask tool and we're going to mask the bottom out, just like that. And then we're going to move it over halfway. So when those line up, I'll choose Effect, Blur, Fast Blur, horizontal only. Increase that. And that way it's kind of soft right here. Then I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. And there's a cool effect called Distort CC Bend It. And the CC effects are on the professional version. And what we want to do is just play around with it. We want to bend it about 101. And you can see what this does. Just kind of does some interesting stuff. We're going to set this to mirror. And we want to move these around until we create sort of a circle. So these are the coordinates. I'm just sort of moving it around. And then I can always adjust this layer to kind of size it down. So by bringing that in, you know, I can change how it looks. And then also if we go into the evolution, if I animate that, you can see it kind of creates an interesting effect. So instead of animating it, we'll alt-click on the stopwatch, hit time times 250, and that will just animate it nicely. So that's that. We'll go and close that, and we'll bring it into our comp here. And we'll set the transfer mode to add. And we can also colorize it if we choose Effect, Color Correction, Hue and Saturation. And then if we just do colorize, we can offset the hue, you know, for like an orange color or, you know, anything like that. So if we want to make it a little more sparse, what we can do is go into that circle and increase the contrast and lower the brightness. And that way there's just a little bit less going on there. So it's kind of cool. So we'll go back to our comp and we'll hit F4. We'll turn on the 3D layer switch. We'll move it back and then we'll duplicate it. Edit, duplicate. We'll move it forward just a bit. Take the rotate tool and we'll rotate it flat. And then move it down so it looks like it's on the floor. And then we'll scale it up. You Also sort of rotate it towards us a little bit. All right, so that's the basic idea there. And we can also change the feathering by going into the circle and playing around with the amount of blur. So if we bring it back just a little bit, it'll look a little bit more like that. So that's pretty cool. I'll go ahead and create a camera in this scene. Choose OK. And go ahead and move it forward just a little. Guess I want to scale this down now. So something like that, and it animates kind of cool. So now what I want to do is kind of create that cool light burst. Now, there's an effect called Trapcode Shine, which is really awesome and does exactly what we're going to do and probably even more. But here's a cool recipe for creating a nice shine effect without shine. So we'll make it black, call it shiny, not to be confused. Now we'll choose Effect, Generate, Lens Flare. Put that right in the center, or wherever. Then we'll choose Effect, Noise, Fractal Noise, and then we'll choose Effect, Blur, CC Radial Fast Blur. So all these effects are going to be used. So we'll go ahead and shut these off, turn on the fractal noise, change the transfer mode to say multiply, and that way we can just see the lens flare right through it. I'm going to the transform settings. Bring the scale down real small. And then we have our radial fast blur. Now what we want to do is sync all of these together. So what we'll do is we'll hit E, bring this up. We want to link the center of the fractal noise. So if we go transform, I'm going to alt click on offset turbulence. And I'm going to link that to the flare center. And that way, our lens flare, wherever it is, the noise is going to follow. Likewise, our radial fast blur, I'm going to alt-click on the center, link it to the lens flare. Then on the radial fast blur, I'm going to increase the size. Change this to add. And then if I take my lens flare, wherever I move it, that whole thing is going to follow. And then if I want to go and give it a little bit more contrast, I can just go play around with the fractal noise settings. And I can also animate it by alt-clicking on the evolution. Here's kind of what that's going to do. It's kind of randomly, change the lighting. So alt-click time times 250. And so now we have kind of a cool animation there. Also, if we change the scaling, it'll change the way the light looks. So if you go real small, then you kind of see that effect. And I can also duplicate the radial fast blur, which will kind of smooth it out. And if we bring the amount down. So that's kind of the idea. Now if I want it to be a little brighter, I can choose Effect, Color Correction, Curves, increase the brightness, and there you have it. So just give it a little bit of a contrast curve. Go into the blue channel, bring that down. That way we kind of have a golden color. Looking pretty good. We'll go into the project. We'll take our phone, bring that out. And line this animation up. And we want to go ahead and sort of position this correctly. So we'll take our background circle and we'll scale it up. And we also want to brighten our phone layer. So we'll choose Effect, Color Correction, Curves. We'll brighten that up a bit. That looks good. We can also probably add a nice glow. But before we do, let's go and shrink the size of the phone. So to shrink it, we're just going to move the camera back with the null object. So we'll go here and we'll just back it up a little bit further and move it over so that the phone is still centered. So that looks nice. And to give it more perspective even, you can change the camera type and do, like a 20mm lens, and then move the null object back into position. And so it's just much more of a perspective because the front one is going to be larger than the ones in the back. So just make sure the animation still looks good. Now that it's a wider angle, we need to back this up a little bit more at the first frame. So there we go. Back into the final comp. Still looking good. We can take our circle and we'll move it over so that it's centered. And we can add a nice glow. I'll go and duplicate the phone, take the bottom layer, do Effect, Stylize, Glow. And we can do alpha channel. So the glow's on the alpha. We composite on top. We'll do a red color and we'll do sort of a yellow color. Now the reason I made a copy instead of applying it to that layer is I like to change the transfer mode of the glow so that it looks better. And then I can also duplicate the glow and increase the radius. So there's 2 copies and that just looks really nice and blends well with the scene. So I can also animate the camera in this scene. So I can just take the position, hit P, set the keyframe, move forward, and just push forward just a little bit. Select the keyframes, F9. And in this comp, you can also turn on the motion blur. So turn on for the layers and for the comp. And that way they will kind of come in with some nice blur as they come to a stop. And then we can add our title, take the text tool. Awesome, 6,000. And scale this down, there we go. Now one last thing you might do is you go into the phones and sometimes they show you the optional colors. So you could take, say the second phone, choose color correction, hue and saturation, go to the red channel, and we can sort of offset the color. So we could do like a tan kind of color. Usually you have the front phone is kind of a cool color, and then you have the other colors behind the phone, or the secondary phones aren't always very cool looking colors, and those are for the people who want to be different but in actuality are not. So that's that's definitely the idea there, and I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Of course, visit our site all the time. We love it. videocopilot.net. Great tutorials, great products. Our DVDs are fantastic, and remember, your support is what helps us run this site, so we appreciate it, and you're definitely going to learn a lot of stuff, so be sure to check those out, get you started right away. So I'm Andrew Kramer with videocopilot.net. We'll see you next time.